Hi, I'm Charlie Harper with Policy Best. In our first videos, we focused on how Georgia's gas tax is the only revenue source that funds roads and bridges in the state for the Georgia Department of Transportation. Today we're going to take a look at how the buying power of that tax, which is one that was originally set to be a constitutionally set aside revenue stream as a per mile driven user fee, how that tax has diminished over time.
In 1971, Richard Nixon was president. Gas prices averaged 36 cents at the pump, and Georgia established a gas tax as an excise tax of 7.5 cents per gallon. 7.5 cents was 21% of the cost of a gallon of gas. Or to put it another way, for every dollar spent to fill up a tank, 21 cents went to pay for Georgia's roads and bridges. So how does that compare to today? If the same percentage of the sales price were an excise tax, and using the last 4 years' average of gas prices of roughly 3.38 cents per gallon statewide, Georgia's gas tax would have been about 70 cents per gallon. In reality, the total taxes on gasoline assessed at the state and local level combined to be about 29.2 cents over that last 4-year period. What's worse, the portion devoted to the state's transportation needs was only 16.3 cents. The rest was diverted to the state's general fund or to local government uses. So if the state's proportion of gas tax to sales price had been held constant since the gas tax was established, the state would be collecting over 70 cents per gallon. Instead, the state received just over 16 cents. It's not hard to see that, over time, we've let the buying power of this gas tax erode. Let's look at the buying power of that 7.5 cents of gas tax if it had just been adjusted for inflation. 7.5 cents in 1971 would be worth the equivalent of 43 cents today. While we know that the price of oil is volatile, let's just go ahead and look at what the price of gas would be if it had also only been adjusted for inflation. If it had, the price of that 36-cent gallon of gas in 1971 would be about $2.08 today. Amazingly, that's not too far off of where our current pump prices are, even though most of us believe that those gas prices, they're really not here to stay. That said, if gas and our gas taxes as established in 1971 had both been indexed for inflation, we would be paying about 43 cents in a fixed excise tax of a gallon of gas today that cost us $2.08. Let's emphasize why that matters. The excise tax set in 1971 was fixed. Along the way, we added a 3% sales tax in the early 80s. A fourth penny was added in 1989, though that money has never been used for transportation. It goes to the state's general fund. Local governments began adding local option sales taxes in the 80s and 90s and have continued on since. The result is that we've had a gas tax that's grown to 29.2 cents on average for the last 4 years, but only between 16 and 17 cents of that has actually been used for transportation. If the gas tax had maintained its buying power during this time, we would instead have a 43 cent per gallon tax, all of it being used for transportation. And hopefully that helps put some perspective to the proposal that will realign and reform our current gas tax to a 29.2 cent fixed excise tax at the state level, and will still leave about 6 cents remaining at the local level. A total sales tax, state and local, of about 35 cents per gallon is still 8 cents per gallon less than had the original gas tax been indexed just to inflation. But inflation isn't the only thing that's been chipping away at the user fee we have to pay for Georgia's roads and bridges. Fuel economy and the increasing efficiency of cars is also greatly diminishing the value of this tax when you consider it on a per mile driven basis. According to the University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute, the average fuel efficiency of all cars and light trucks on the road rose from 20.1 miles per gallon in 2007 to 25.6 miles per gallon last year. That's a 27% increase in fuel efficiency for cars on the road just over a 7-year period. That's great for the environment and our country's desire to be energy efficient. It's unfortunately not so great when you consider the gas tax collected on a per mile driven user fee basis. Looked at that same numbers for another way, the increase in fuel efficiency in our cars on the road represents a 21% cut in the tax on a per mile driven basis for the average driver. So how has GDOT fared since this gas tax was originally established way back in the Nixon administration? The number of lane miles that is managed by the Georgia Department of Transportation has grown from about 35,000 miles in the early 70s to just under 50,000 miles today. Meanwhile, the number of GDOT employees has fallen to just over 4,000 today. Clearly, they're doing a lot more with less. So where does this leave us? Hopefully with some perspective. If a transportation bill passes similar to the one that passed the Georgia House, an average Georgia driver will likely pay about $5 per month more than they paid last year. However, if the original gas tax, as set in the 70s, had been indexed just for inflation, Georgians would be paying significantly more. And if the same percentage of the gas tax as a proportion of the gallon of a cost of gasoline had been held constant since that 1971 price, last year when gas prices were up in that $3 range, Georgians would have been paying almost 3 times the current taxes we pay now had we kept that same proportion. Meanwhile, each of us are driving farther on each gallon of gas we buy as we replace our cars with newer and more fuel-efficient models. This means the tax we pay per mile driven continues to decline. At the end of the day, how we consider this and measure it and frankly reconcile this is really up to each individual. The important thing is that we have a clearly established need and we have historically underfunded this responsibility, and that is what we must address. Semantics won't pave any roads nor build any bridges. Only the proper amount of funding matched to meet this need will.
As always, we thank you for taking a few minutes of your day to learn a little more about how Georgia funds its transportation system. We ask if you would mind, please forward this video to your friends that also need to learn a little more about how we fund our transportation. And thank you again for watching. Have a great day.